You've got to be impressed with what Jon Scheyer was able to do in his first season as Duke men's basketball head coach. The story of the year still remains to be written, the final chapters at least, as Duke men's basketball gears up for the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament. Let's talk about year one for Coach Scheyer and what's left for this Duke basketball team coming up in March. We're going to do all of that here on Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us on this Wednesday, March 8th, 2023. Locked On Blue Devils is a daily podcast devoted to everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. So this week, of course, we're focused a lot on the Duke men's basketball team as they gear up for the ACC tournament. Also, the Blue Devils getting set to compete in the NCAA tournament. We'll have Selection Sunday this upcoming Sunday to find out where Duke is headed. On today's show, my good pal Connor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated will be my guest. We'll talk about the first season of Jon Scheyer and a whole lot more all throughout today's show. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever you get your podcasts. Also, be sure to watch the show daily, each and every day on YouTube to stay up to date with things going on with Duke athletics. Without further ado, let me bring on my good pal Connor O'Neill, who joins us here on the program today. Connor, all of a sudden, you look at the calendar, postseason basketball is finally here. We made it, man. Here we are.
We made it. It feels like not too long ago that I was schlepping down to Durham for the first game of Jon Scheyer's tenure. The first official, I like to joke that he was 2.5-0 when he took over.
Good point.
With the COVID year win against BC, and then the win at Wake last season, and then he had that half that he coached when Coach K had an IV in him in the other game against Wake last year. But yeah, it's been a good season.
People forgot that you could win half a game, and yet that's what we saw Coach Scheyer do.
He actually got outscored in that half, so you could make the point that he was
fair.
two and a half game.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we talk about year one for Coach Scheyer, 23-8 in the regular season. Duke is the number 4 seed in the ACC tournament. I mean, if we're just putting regular season grades out there for year one of the Scheyer era, how did he fare?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can nitpick some things, and you can get bogged down in the January kind of doldrums that we saw this team going through. Look, they look bad in some of those road losses, like the losses at Wake and State within 2 weeks of each other were both listless, I think is the word I used. The losses at Clemson and Virginia Tech, they kind of came in pairs. Clemson and Virginia Tech, they were both kind of, close games that Duke didn't start well and climbed their way out and had a chance to win and then faltered at the end. And then, the other pair of road losses in the ACC couldn't be more polar opposite. Felt like they lost that Miami game in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game. You might say the first possession when Norchad Omir is stepping out and hitting a 27-footer on your head.
Right.
But and then the Virginia game was the opposite. I mean, the ACC admits fault that Kyle Filipowski should have had free throws to win that game in regulation. And that's I have the stats right here in front of me. He's a 77.7% free throw shooter. You like to think that even in a pressure-packed situation like that, he's making one of those two, and Duke notches a road win against Virginia. To get to your question, to stop filibustering, it's been I would struggle to ask for anything better in a coach's first season. We just got finished with a press conference at Duke, and one of the things John has talked about is knowing that he knew this season would have some bumps in the road. You can't really anticipate having to deal with the injury situations that they've had to deal with Dariq Whitehead, Derek Lively, and Jeremy Roach coming to mind immediately there. With the injuries that they've done, 7 freshmen, 2 grad transfers, two other practice squad players that transferred in. And then basically 1 player who's back from last year that played meaningful minutes. There were bound to be some growing pains here. And one of the things that struck me after the Carolina game this past weekend was John said they would not be the team they are right now if they didn't have some of those losses, if they didn't go through some of the things that they've gone through. If they hadn't been through some of that adversity, maybe they'd have a better record, but they wouldn't be better suited to go into this month playing their best basketball. And when you boil it down, like that's what you want to be doing. 8 losses. I'm sure it was 8 times more than Duke fans would like Duke to lose, but you've got to, there, as I think it was Ryan Young mentioned today, like, nobody in college basketball is undefeated. I don't know if we're ever going to see an undefeated team in college basketball ever again. If that Kentucky team couldn't pull it off a few seasons back, I don't know if anybody's going to do that. So you're going to have losses, and it's how you deal with it. And this team, for as young as they are, and for as for as much of a leadership vacuum that was left after last season, and that had to be filled this year with new guys and new pieces, and to Jeremy Roach, they've played great.
Indeed, they have. And that's why we're so excited to see what Duke can do with this ACC tournament. And they are one of the favorites to win the event there in Greensboro this week. And they've got their work cut out for them, though. But Duke riding a 6-game winning streak going in, you got to feel good about the Blue Devils' chances. We'll talk a little bit more about that ACC tournament when Locked On Blue Devils continues here in a moment. Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is our absolute favorite sports book in America. It's the #1 sports book out there. Why? Well, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores, 3-point shots drained, and so much more. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Connor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated. Now is as good of a time as ever to go and read your work, to subscribe to your platform there with Rivals. Connor, tell me a little bit about what's going on this time of year.
Yeah, this time of year, man, it's funny. It feels like there's 2 main seasons of college coverage, and it's in season and out of season. And out of season is about 2 or 3 months in the summer when you're kind of getting ready for football. And
right.
We're in the thick of in season right now. Got a story on Kyle Filipowski being named Rookie of the Year, a breakdown of Saturday's win against Carolina, and we'll have plenty of ACC tournament coverage. I live 20 minutes down the road from the Coliseum, so I'll be there for long hours and late nights, cranking out some stories.
Can't wait to see the event unfold this week and see what Duke is able to accomplish there in the ACC tournament. Go follow Connor O'Neill and his work at ConnorO'Neill_DI. So as we get set for the ACC tournament here this week, and with Duke getting set to play an afternoon game on Thursday, tomorrow, that's tomorrow, and Duke will play the winner of Pitt and a game that happened on Tuesday as we're recording this. So with all that to be said, Connor, what are expectations for Duke as you take a look at this bracket here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a pretty big relier on KenPom, and I think KenPom has Duke as the tournament favorite, even though they're 4 seed. They've played a lot of the best basketball lately. 6-game winning streak is, I think, more than twice as many as any other winning streak in the ACC. I know going into the last weekend, it was Duke at 5 wins in a row, Carolina and BC at 3 wins in a row. And obviously Duke beat Carolina and BC lost to fall into a Tuesday game. So Duke is the hot team in the ACC. I do think, that potential for a Pitt game in that quarterfinal, that's a Pitt team that, you try to see things from the other side of the coin, from the other perspective. Pitt probably feels like they should have won in Durham. They lost by 2. It was a really tough game. I kind of think of that game as the Derek Lively coming out party. Like, that was the first time that I felt like we saw what he could be defensively as a guy that stayed in front of those really tough-nosed and really versatile Pitt guards. Like, he guarded them on the perimeter. Blake Hinson just struggled to get it going there in the later portions of the game. So that's one that I would be really looking forward to seeing. But Georgia Tech has been pretty improved. Florida State is talented. They just didn't have a good season. They're not a typical Leonard Hamilton team. What Duke has going for it is it's 3-0 against those teams this year. All of them were just one time each, and Duke won every game. The matchup that you're anticipating there, though, is Miami Duke in the semifinal. That would see some sparks fly. That'd be a fun one.
Yeah, I hope we get a chance to see that game, kind of the rubber match between those two teams, as Duke obviously had the 2-point victory at Cameron and then got boat raced there in Coral Gables. So we'll see what a neutral site floor in the Greensboro Coliseum does for the Dukies in this one. So talking about Duke's performance, though, so far this season, come tournament time, obviously the balance scoring of being able to dominate points in the paint, but also knocking down shots from the outside. I mean, I don't know that there is a perfect combination that we've seen so far this season, but should Duke want to go on a run, should Duke want to be the ACC champions, how do they get it done offensively in your eyes? Like, what formula adds up to see Duke be the ACC champs from the offensive end of the floor?
I think to beat Pitt, they'd have to go inside. I think that's a game that you would look at let's see if I can get it pulled up here really quick. The first time around against Pitt, Kyle Filipowski had 28 and 15.
Yeah. Pretty
that,
good.
That was in that stretch where he had some monster games. They're not your 17 and 10 double doubles. They're your fill it up and then keep going double doubles. I think you would be looking for a similar kind of stat line. You don't project 28 and 15, but you kind of think along the lines of, if they get that type of performance, maybe throw in some Mark Mitchell production and some Derek Lively production. That would be the formula offensively against Pitt. Against Miami, I mean, you have to make shots. Like, you either that is a team that is just a super talented offensive team. I had the numbers done. Let me see if I can pull it back up here. Miami in the first matchup was 12 for 42 on 2-point shots. They were 10 of 21 on threes. They hit some threes. Like, Nigel Pack was unconscious early.
That's right.
Jordan Miller was 3 of 4, but 12 of 42 from inside the arc. This is a Miami team that their 2-point percentage this year is 54.5%. That's 32 in the country. They're not a team that typically misses a bunch of shots from in close. Like, they have 3-level scorers in Miller, Wong, Pack. O'Meara is a load down low. Like, that was a game that, again, like, we saw some great stuff out of Derek Lively, but it also feels like the game at Miami where Miami scores 81 points on Duke, that's what Miami wants to do to you offensively. They just want to take over the game with their offense. I have my dual citizenship where I cover Wake also, and Wake went down to Miami later in the season a couple weeks ago, and Miami jumped out on them at the end of the first half, and in the second half it was like a 15 to 18 point game. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I put the tweet out like, Miami's going to let you score. They're going to let you come back in games that they get up on you because they don't play defense. They don't really want to play defense. They just want to keep scoring on you. And that's basically what they did to Wake. That's basically what they did to Duke in the game down there also. You probably, in your basic view of Duke's loss down there, is just it was a 22-point game. Everything about this game was awful. There was a brief window in the end of the first half where Duke had kind of narrowed things and looked like they had kind of worked their way back into the game, and then Miami just ran away with it. That was kind of the window where Wake took a little more of advantage of it and was getting back into the game, and then Miami again just kept scoring. They're just going to keep scoring. So Duke, I mean, if you're going to hold them under 30% on 2-point shots, your defense is really good. I don't know if it's that good to do it again. So I would say that's a game that Duke would need to hit probably 10 to 15 threes. That's a lot to ask for a team that is not thought of as a jump shooting team.
Sure.
But yeah, you're going to need some guys to get hot, I think, to beat that Miami team, or you're going to need a otherworldly defensive performance.
It's Locked On Blue Devils here today. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Connor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated, talking about the ACC tournament ahead for Duke and other teams there in Greensboro. 23-8, the final record for the Blue Devils in the regular season. They, of course, saw Kyle Filipowski named Freshman of the Year, along with Tyrese Proctor and Derek Lively II getting all freshman team selections. If you're watching us on YouTube, we've got the end of the season, regular season stats here posted for Duke. When you look at some of these individual numbers, Connor, anything in particular that jumps out to you with this Duke squad? Open-ended question there, pretty wide range of answers that you could go for, but I'm just curious.
I haven't looked at the overall stats here in the breakdown in quite a while. It's kind of news to me that there's only 2 guys averaging double figures.
That's what I was thinking as well. Yeah.
I love my stat. I call it my stat. But I love the stat of Duke is 13-1 when Mark Mitchell scores at least 10 points.
I reference that very frequently on the program. I'm very glad that you brought that stat to life. Very glad you brought that stat to life. I
feel like the first place I said it was on this podcast a few visits ago, when they were something like 9-1 or 10-1. But yeah, it just makes such a difference when he is attacking off the dribble, when he is engaged offensively. And like I've said, he doesn't have to be your first, second, or third option really, but if he's on the wing and looking to attack, it's so much of a difference maker rather than just having him post up in the corner and be available for a spot up 3 every now and then. And then he crashes the boards. I mean, you see his 4.4 rebounds a game feels a little low to him. He had, I think John Scheyer called it after Saturday's win at Carolina, the 2 biggest rebounds of Duke's season. To that point, where the 2 late rebounds against Carolina off of missed shots when they're trying to get the game tied or take a lead. Otherwise, I mean, it's crazy to see Derek Lively's blocks number at 2.3 because I feel like it feels like he alters anywhere from 7 to 12 shots a game at the rim. Right. I mean, that's something that I tweeted when ACC Awards came out on Monday, how wild it was that the best defensive player in the country received the 4th most votes to be on the all-defensive team. I really believe that he is the best defensive player in the conference. I might have said country there just a second. I meant conference. Maybe he is in the country. I will admit I do not watch enough other conferences.
Sure.
But man, he just changes everything. And he's a 7-1 guy that you feel good about switching 1 through 5. And he just opens everything up for your defense when you're able to do that. I think I've mentioned on here before, a lot of teams say they want to switch 1 through 5. Duke actually does switch 1 through 5. It's not just some illusion. It's not some they're going to run a trap coverage and say that they switch 1 through 5. They switch 1 through 5. Derek Lively is able to stay in front of guards on the perimeter and make it difficult for them to shoot over him and make it difficult for them to drive by him. And those are your two options, basically. So when you take away both options, every offense runs so many pick and rolls and ball screens. That's so valuable for a defense. So yeah, he's a fantastic defensive player. Otherwise, the other point that I would make after seeing the stats, I know fans thought and really Duke's staff thought they were getting one thing in Dariq Whitehead. It just hasn't panned out that way for obvious reasons, right? He's dealt with 2 pretty significant injuries, one that required surgery. If he just keeps doing what he's been doing, which is spot up shooting, there's some room for improvement, I would say, in his defense, but I've thought he's not a defensive liability by any stretch. He carries the load when he's in there. That's the key moving forward for this team too, is just getting him some confident shots, getting his contributions where it can come. He's not going to be I was trying to explain to somebody the other day, I really think you can make the argument that Duke thought they were getting kind of a Jason Tatum type player with him, oversized wing kind of guard with ball handling capabilities that you could trust to honestly play a little bit of point guard for you, but also could go inside and get you a bucket, could make the occasional threes. That's just not been him. But what he has become is what this team needed, and that's a spot-up shooter. If he can start doing those other things, great. But if spot-up shooting is the only thing you're going to get out of him, he's still doing that role well. He's still filling the role. He's still contributing. He's still involved. So I think that's a key moving forward into March.
Really excited to see what Duke can accomplish here in the ACC tournament this week in Greensboro, and also what they can do there in the NCAA tournament post-Selection Sunday, of course, coming up again this weekend. Connor, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here on the podcast with us. Remind me one more time where we can find your work.
That is Devils Illustrated. The address is duke.rivals.com, but I believe if you just type in devilsillustrated.com, it'll still take you to the site there. We'll be pumping out the content there in Greensboro.
I love it. Connor, thanks so much for the time. We'll talk again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ. I appreciate it.
All right, that's Connor O'Neill joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Once again, thank you for your support, as always, with this program. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.